Howdy. Welcome, welcome. Let's see, we're trickling in here. Great, great. Welcome to another edition of our Industry Insider Edition, our Cocktails and Conversation. All of these are words. Some of them are correct. So, Luke Zabor, I'm Shannon Healy. We're here again with Claire Catati, working the technological wizardry.
Like the ones and twos?
It's like the ones and twos.
Okay.
But it's more modern.
Yeah.
For the kids.
Yeah.
So a lot of you have joined us for previous installments, and thank you. We're having a lot of fun doing this every week. If you're seeing this at a later date on the YouTubes, hope you enjoy it then too. So today we're very excited about having a Jordan Bushell, all the way from Canada, to talk to us about this Irish named product all the way from France. So we're really excited about talking about something all of us have seen everywhere in the world, Hennessy Cognac. And welcome, Jordan.
Welcome.
Thanks very much for having me. Pleasure to be here. I'll apologize up front for my dog. A new puppy, his name's Brewy, which for those who already know about cognac, that's the first distillate of cognac. He's found his voice recently and he likes using it. So you may hear him intermittently throughout the day, but apologize for that, but happy to be here and shed some light on cognac.
Outstanding. So the first distillate, not to jump too far ahead, but cognac is distilled twice, correct?
Correct. Yeah, twice through copper pot distillations. In fact, cognac pioneered double copper pot distillation. So sort of like whiskey, you're welcome. We helped come up with the techniques to create all whiskey.
Outstanding. So when it goes through a second pass, I believe you use a name for it that confuses some people. What is it called then?
Yeah. So the first pass, you take the wine, you go through once, and it's called Brewy. The second pass, you would get eau de vie, so water of life. And a lot of people, get confused between that and cognac itself. Most times when you get to distillate, you're saying, it's this, and we're just aging it. But we call it eau de vie until it's been aged for at least 2 years. And at that point, if you wanted to, you could blend 2 eau de vie together of at least 2 years of age in oak, and it would then be able to be called cognac. There are a few other nuanced rules in there, but essentially cognac must be a blend of 2 eau de vie. And there's a lot of times people, especially English, we take that and we say, oh, so it's eau de vies. 2 eau de vies together create cognac, but eau de vies would be adding English pluralization to a French term. So eau de vie is spelled 2 different ways, one with an X and one without. The one with an X is the plural, but it sounds the same to us. So only on paper would it ever be the difference. Now that I put that out in the world, I will almost definitely say it later today.
Excellent. Excellent. So 2 quick points about what you just said. A, we're not going to get any single barrel Hennessy anytime soon.
Not in the truest sense of the term. There are some single barrel cognacs out there, but what I believe they're doing is taking 2 eau de vie at 2 years, putting them together, and then letting it rest further, and then putting that out as a single barrel. Like the idea is there for the single barrel, but it's not the truest sense of what whiskey is doing.
Got it. Okay.
Well, do we want to drink?
Yeah. Speaking of, let's start with a drink. You want to take the lead here?
I got some of your lovely syrups in the mail, and before everyone got on, we were talking about the trials and tribulations of trying to ship things to Canada. Moral of the story is don't do it. You'll have to pay a lot of taxes or duties, and most likely it will be broken on the way there. So just when we open the border again, just walk it across. It'll be easier. So I got this lovely Alley 26 lemongrass syrup, and the viscosity on it's great, the flavor on it's great. So I took this in a very simple form and combined it with a kind of a traditional way of drinking cognac, which is cognac and tonic. And that may seem very, very odd. Most of the time we think of gin and tonic, or at the very least, vodka and tonic. But there's a tonic producer. It'd be hard to call them artisanal because they've been around for forever. But they basically, all they do is make tonic water. And they're based in cognac. Their area code is right in the heart of cognac. And so a lot of people in cognac drink tonic water with cognac. And it works out very well. It takes, you know, the tonic water highlights all the beautiful floral and light fruit notes of cognac, because cognac starts as a white wine. So in that way, we can think of those white wine notes as really marrying well with kind of that white spirit comparison you get with other tonic kind of mixers. So I'm going to use half an ounce of the lemongrass syrup. Now, I probably should have started with my lemon juice, because I always say you should start with your cheapest ingredient first, and lemon is probably very much cheaper than this beautiful bottling of syrup I've got. So you would you start with your cheapest ingredient first, because if you screw up, you can dump it down the sink and not cry about it. So in that case, it should have been lemon, which I did 3/4 of an ounce of lemon to half an ounce of the lemongrass syrup. Now I'm going to use Hennessy VSOP in this, because the VSOP has a lot of these light floral notes, beautiful fruit. It's got a lot more red fruit coming out, but this is going to bring out kind of the floral side of it, because this doesn't go in nearly the new oak that VS does, which we'll talk about later on. But the spice of VS to this could go well if you added maybe ginger to it to pair with that lemongrass. But in this case, highlighting the lemongrass and that citrus note, VSOP is going to work really, really well. And to that, I'm just going to shake it up with ice.
Are we just giving it a short shake since we're going to top it off with soda water? Or are we giving...
Yeah, you're just going to give it a shake to kind of combine it, aerate it a little bit. You know, a little 10-second shake. Nice tall glass.
He used ice.
Some fresh ice in there, and then top off with some tonic water. I would garnish this with lemongrass, but due to the border restrictions, I got the syrups kind of today, so I don't actually have any lemongrass. But you could garnish with a lemon twist or lemongrass. It's going to bring it out. The aeration from that shake combined with the tonic water is going to work to give it kind of a beautiful look. And this drink really is what we need right now, waiting, you know, getting this warm weather in, coming in nicely, and all the refreshment. So thank you for sending me the syrup, and thank you for having me. I think this is a great way to start the night.
Well, I take your word for it, but we're going to have to drink it. Mm-hmm. This looks great. Love the smell of that. The interesting thing, as a bartender, you can probably speak more to this, about brandy, cognac specifically, maybe it's because of that wine base, is that clearly it works well in like whiskey cocktails, barrel-aged spirits. Usually you can plug and play and have good results. But brandy also can take the place of a white spirit in many cases. It just kind of comes off really well. Cheers. Cheers.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's got that crazy duality to it where it plays with, you know, sometimes it can be surprising where you're trying to play to the light notes and the heavy notes come out. Other times you're trying to play to the heavy notes and the light notes come out. So it can really kind of trick you in that way. I think gin is kind of a really great descriptor, because sometimes you want those citrus or fruity notes out of the gin and you get the herbaceous notes. Other times you want the herbaceous notes and you get the citrus notes. And it all depends, you know, which gin you're playing with, what else you're putting with it. And I think cognac, because of that white wine, is very much that way. Like, it's got those light notes in there. And so much of the time when you dilute it in this way, you can bring out those light notes. Cognac, you know, a lot of people think, oh, you can't mix with it. It's that after dinner drink and the snifter and the leather armchair and that kind of thing. But that's actually a much more modern interpretation of it versus historically, it was treated as a white wine concentrate, a way to, like all brandy was, a way to ship wine over greater distance from Europe to like the colonies or the trade partners of the world, so that like a light white wine from Northern Europe would have spoiled on a long sea voyage. You distill it and you get kind of a semblance of that original flavor there. And they would cut it with water or another mixer to bring out that wine, or to get the alcohol level down to what the wine was and get the flavor there. So it's, you know, in putting it in a tall drink, you're kind of getting that white wine note in a lot of ways. And when we look at cognac, it very much is a concentrate. It's nine bottles of wine become 1 bottle of eau de vie. That's the level of concentration of those wine flavors. So they're there, but certainly to your point, with the comparison to whiskey, you get that barrel taking over at some point, or that barrel coming in. And we think about the barrel flavor a lot more than we think about the white wine that's the base.
This is delicious.
Yeah.
Thank you. So maybe you could talk just a wee bit more about that, because you said you went to VSOP. We had we had the VS here.
Yep. So
now,
yeah, the VS. Okay.
Oh no, you go.
Nope. So yeah, the VS is, and you've got the regular bottle. I've got this limited edition bottle. I used all my regular bottles, so I went to this one. Don't worry, I have some that I'm not opening, but COVID. That's an important distinctive thing, because people don't know a lot about cognac. So they often just go, okay, well, VSOP is more expensive than VS. It's older. It must be better. But you can't age VS longer and get VSOP. You can't age VSOP longer and get XO. The difference between aging grape distillates and aging grain distillates is one of maturation. And we talk about maturity versus age in cognac, because as my mother likes to say, age and maturity are two vastly different things. And, you know, I think a lot of the bar industry understands that a lot. But you can't, you know, everything matures at the point it matures. It can't be rushed. It can't be, you know, tricked into it. And an immature eau de vie would be actually quite acidic and quite bitter. And as it matures, it gets the fruity qualities come out. And so they can see it mature in that way. If you tried an immature eau de vie, you'd see all that. And the best example that you can get at home is a wine that needs to be aged, or a wine that maybe needs to be decanted. You try it before it's decanted, you get all these tannins, you get all this acidity out. You know, maybe you age it a couple years, or you decant it, you know, an hour, and all of a sudden that fruit comes out more. The same is true of the wine distillate. It takes more time to kind of pair with that barrel, to interact with the air and interact with the wood to kind of reach that maturity. And so each mark of Hennessy, or each mark of any cognac house, is different because of the eau de vie that go into them. And each one of them needs to tell their own story. So it's a really incredibly difficult thing to do, to create individual cognacs and make them different, because their eau de vie are going to be different every year. Whereas everything else on your back bar and my back bar that's not of a grape base really is dealing with a consistency of a distillate, whereas cognac and other brandies are dealing with an inconsistency of their distillate. Their distillates are going to be different every single time. Every field is going to do something different, which means when you concentrate it, it's going to be even greater difference. And then so when it's aging, they're all going to age differently, because whiskey is dealing with, and I use whiskey as an example of all aged spirits. Whiskey is dealing with the inconsistency of barrels. That's where we get those beautiful single barrel offerings, where they're putting something in one barrel and it's going to go this way, and another barrel is going to go this way. but they're all starting at the same point. So when they blend at the end, they're starting with that similarity and getting the differences and putting them together to get a great final product, or in a single barrel version, you know, whatever the barrel gave them. In cognac, you're starting with chaos and you're trying to get it together to make that blend consistent. Well, in so doing, you need to be taking those eau de vie every day, or sorry, every year, and judging them. Where are they going? Are they going in the flavor direction that's interesting, or are they getting too much oak? Should they come this way, or should they get more oak? And it's an ongoing process that is the reason we have an 8th generation master blender at Hennessy, who leads a team of individuals every day between 11 and 1, the same individuals every day. There's 7 of them, called our tasting committee, that taste between 40 and 60 eau de vie every day between 11 and 1. And by the end of the year, they will have tasted through our entire stock, so that they know how each eau de vie is doing and when they're reaching their maturity, and they're guiding them along the path.
So they're rushing into it, you're saying?
Yeah, totally. It's a really automated process. No, they're going about it methodically with kind of, it's a lot of educated decision making, but it's summed up with something that it's very frustrating when we look at the spirit world and we get definitives from some spirit categories where they know this is exactly how we do this. Whereas in cognac, I was told very early on in my time with Hennessy, and I've been with Hennessy for 10 years now, they said I was asking all these nerdy questions, trying to get to the heart of it. Like, how do you do this? Stop being romantic about it and tell me how you do this. And they said, well, there's no definitives in cognac. There's only generalities. In general, they think they know how a particular field is going to react to age, maturity in a barrel, but they have to let it sit in order to make sure, because the weather is going to play a part in the individual year. All of it is going to, there's different variables that are going to cause the equation to go awry. And so you can never be sure. You can only have an educated guess on what's going to happen.
Is that people's everyday job to just come in and taste, what do you say, between 11 and 1?
It is a very important part of their job, but everyone on that tasting committee trains for 10 years to be on the committee, but they all have an integral role to the rest of our production. So on the tasting committee, we have our cellar master, we have our director of distillation, we have our vineyard director. So he manages our vineyards and our partnership vineyards. In fact, Renaud, our master blender, when he was training under his uncle as the 7th generation master blender, he's now the 8th. He was our vineyard director. So every single member of the committee has an integral role to the production of cognac, and they approach that role with a singular idea of what we're looking for through that 10 years of training to be on the committee. But they also bring their individual expertise from all the sides that they manage.
Gotcha. Thank you.
When you were saying they know what they're looking for, and you were talking about the vineyard manager.
Yeah.
What are they looking for, like, for the base wine? I know it's Uni Blanc, I believe, right?
Yeah, 99% of cognac is made with Uni Blanc. There are a few other permitted varietals, but Uni Blanc is universally the accepted one that works out really well for the reasons we're looking for. And those reasons are, we need a highly acidic wine and high acidity in wine. For those that aren't into wine, high acidity generally means low sugar, which generally means low alcohol. We're not looking for table wine that you could drink. Our wine is not good. It's not good to drink. It's made for distillation. Cognac is the most northern region in which Uni Blanc grows. If you wanted to drink Uni Blanc, Italy makes Trebbiano, and Trebbiano and Uni Blanc are the same varietal. Just the Italian and the French disagree on everything. So different names, same grape. But in its table wine form, Trebbiano is light, bright, acidic. So when you take it and put it in a cooler climate, it is even more so. And we need that because by law, we are not permitted, nor would we want to add preservatives to the wine. Because if you add sulfites or any other preservative to the wine, yeah, you're going to be able to keep the wine stabilized until you're ready to distill it. But when you're concentrating flavors, imagine concentrating a preservative. It's not in anyone's interest to do that. It would add a lot of flavors to the wine. So what we are looking for is that high acidity, because that high acidity is a preservative in its own right. So we preserve the wine through high acidity and temperature control. We use a singular yeast strain that is so that we have control of that variable. A lot of people think it'd be interesting to get different yeast strains and everything like that. But when the eau de vie are different every year, or when the wine is different every year, to add another variable of a different yeast strain would mean we don't then understand how it's going to mature. Therefore, we would have a hard time making a consistent product. As an individual expression, as a one-off, it might be interesting, but as far as the core range, that would be a disaster in the making. So we have the singular yeast strain, and then it's kept. And unlike most of the spirit world, we cannot distill past March 31st. So April 1st is, more than April Fool's Day. It's joke's on you. You're not making cognac anymore. If you're still distilling in cognac at that time, it's brandy or something else, because it can't be called cognac. Because again, we have that acidity and that temperature control, but at the same time, the wine will still change eventually, because that's not a perfect way to keep it. So we like to be, by law, we need to be done by the end of March. In generally, as large as Hennessy is, we're over 50% of the cognac category. We tend to be done first week of March.
You probably don't want to push it.
No, we like to be done as soon as possible. Like as soon as we're ready to distill, which is global warming has, I don't know what side of the fence you're on with that, whether you believe in global warming or you're wrong. But we know it's happening because it's affecting the grapes. We used to harvest in October. We've had to start harvesting, mid to early September. And that's giving us more time to distill, because we're allowed to distill till the end of March. But in our minds, that's also pushed that date. Even though we're permitted to go to the end of March, if it's harvested earlier, technically we think we should be done distilling earlier as well, to get that same window of the preservation of the wine, the core flavors we want in the wine. And to link to the earlier point of generalized statements of, if we know a particular field or a particular family we get our grapes from has been historically really great, produce great eau de vie, we will try to distill them first. Like, we don't want the wine to start changing. The faster we can get it from grape to pressing into wine, and the faster we can get it from wine into distillation, the better for us. So it takes about 3 weeks to ferment the wine properly. And then the best of them historically, and then if we're going to obviously taste year in and year out, but if they're still of that, if the wine's of the quality that we are used to from them, they're first to be distilled. So we try to distill all the best stuff first, and go from there. Now we're looking at good to great. So all the great stuff gets distilled first, and the good stuff waits till later.
So when are you allowed to distill? If you have to stop by April, is it January when you can start?
No, September.
It's generally November used to be the start date when we were harvesting in October, but we can start distilling as soon as the wine is fermented properly.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Generally about 3 weeks after generally about 3 weeks after we harvest.
Okay,
nice. So you talked about vineyard partners, or a singular yeast strain. Does that mean Hennessy is basically sharing that yeast strain with the different wineries that are supplying you with wine?
It's you hear a lot about people saying like, oh, we like the famous story is like the Bacardi family is the only thing they took from Cuba was their yeast strain and things like that. But it's because we work with so many partners. To my knowledge, all of Cognac uses the same yeast strain. And so they're just getting it from a yeast monger.
Ah, okay.
Because all of these families, so we work with 1,800 families.
Okay.
That grow for us. We're considered one of the largest growers in Cognac, and yet we only use, or only the stuff that we grow ourselves accounts for about 1% of what we would need, because most of our fields are used for research and development for the future growth of Cognac. So we're like, to battle global warming, we're doing the experiments so the families don't need to. And we share our knowledge with them so they can adapt to new pests, new global warming, new rules or regulations or anything like that. We're trying to teach them how to grow the best grapes, but in that equation, technique is what we can give them, but what they bring to the table is terroir. They understand their land better than anyone else. Like a great example is, one of the great joys of my job before COVID was going into bars and doing guest shifts. I love being behind new bars. However, I'm going to be far less effective than the two of you behind your bar because you know where everything is. You know how to utilize that bar to the utmost efficiency. Land is cheap in Cognac as far as vineyards go. It's not like Champagne where all the crew has been used up and land goes for, millions of euro. We could buy all the land we need. But what we would lose there is the experience of working that land. So the families that work that land, they worked it for, in some cases, 11 generations. They understand all the nuance of how that land operates, how to, treat the soil, how to treat the grapes, how to treat, the different hillsides and divots within it. So they get the best out of it when we show them a technique, and that's what we want. We want the best eau de vie. And so some of those families are going to take what we teach them, and they're going to sell maybe 70% of their stuff to us, but they might sell 20% to Remy Martin. They might sell 20% to, Cavassier. They might sell, the other part to one of our competitors. And then they might use 10% for themselves to produce their own small Cognac. But at the end of the day, if we get great grapes, we get great eau de vie, that's all we want.
Is there any sort of teamwork between like Cavassier and Remy?
Between all the Cognac houses, there's a lot of teamwork in the sense of we have a protected domain of origin. We have an AOC, as the French called, and that we all need to protect Cognac, because if Cognac is destroyed, we can't make Cognac anymore. Like if the land is destroyed there, if it's polluted. So, we have research and development. So does Remy Martin, so does Cavassier. They're looking for the future as well. Hennessy just happens to be the biggest. We've been devoted to kind of environmental before environmental was cool. Back in 1971, we were putting environmental initiatives into place to preserve the land because we could see it starting to change. So yes, there's partnership between all of them, and a lot of that is spearheaded by the BNIC. So we have the AOC, Appellation Origin of Control, which is the control region. Everywhere else in the world would be called Domain of Origin, which tells us what we can grow, how we can grow it. And then the BNIC is the Bureau National Interprofessional de Cognac. They tell us how we can turn that into Cognac. So cool. They have a lot of the working with all those groups, working with the other brands and everybody, big and small, to figure out the future.
Great.
One thing you mentioned earlier, and you said you'd get into a little later, just a couple of things. A, what are the age minimums? Like VS, yeah. VSOP, XO, and second part of this two-parter, you mentioned the VSOP having lighter floral notes because you're using different kinds of barrels than the VS. If you would like lay that out for everybody, like what those years are, and then what does it mean, like what the barrel difference is.
Totally. So there's a lot to unpack there. We'll go with the legal requirements first. And it's one of the reasons you don't see age statements on cognac bottles a lot, because they don't really mean anything. It's about the maturity. You know, if you pulled out the eau de vie from VSOP at the age of a VS, they would be, as I said, immature, which means they're going to be bitter and tart. And if you aged VS to the point of VSOP, it would be overaged. So it'd be, you know, too oaky. It'd be like chewing on an oak table. So they're each going to mature at different rates, and they're each going to bring something to the table. So an immature eau de vie, because of that acidity and tartness, is going to handle a barrel better over time, because at its base, it might have more acidity and tartness, which, you know, you look at a young Bordeaux, famous red wine region that is actually the northern border of Bordeaux is the southern border of Cognac. If you drank a 2018 Bordeaux right now, it would be awful. It would be just too dry, too tannic, too astringent. It wouldn't work. Whereas a 2018 Napa, you know, even a Bordeaux blend from Napa, because of the warm climate there, would be beautiful right now. You know, obviously depending on the producer, but and the same for Bordeaux. But give it 50 years, that Napa might be vinegar, and that Bordeaux might be going for, you know, the highest price a wine bottle could go for. So that's the same for the distilled stuff. So by law, we pay attention to it, obviously, but we don't put as much stock into it for the quality. So VS, by law, to be a cognac, VS is the youngest, needs to be at least 2 years old. VSOP needs to be at least 4 years old. XO needs to be at least 10 years old. Now, the law used to be 6 years, but in 2018, it changed to 10 years. So there are some other things in the middle, like a 6-year-old can be called a Napoleon, which kind of got lost historically when XO was also 6 years. But now it's kind of, we may see more Napoleons coming out as an age statement between VSOP and XO. But the minimum is not the story. The story is the blend. So VS for Hennessy is a blend of 40 different eau de vie between the ages of 2 and 8. And when you look at a whiskey, if there's an age statement on the bottle, I don't have anyone behind me with an age statement, but let's say you pull a Scotch and it says 12 years old. There's likely, unless it's a single barrel, going to be some 13, some 14, maybe some 15 in there to balance it out. But the vast majority is going to be 12 year, and then it's a sliding scale to like a few, you know, a few liters or a few barrels from an older one. With cognac, it's more of a pyramid, where when I say 2 to 8, there's very little 2 and there's very little 8. Versus 4, 5, and 6 in the center, there's going to be a lot more 5. There's going to be less 4 than 5 and less 6 than 5. But because that core mid-range between 2 and 8 is when we get to that maturity point. Some are going to mature younger, some are going to mature later. But in general, that range allows us to get consistency and maturity no matter what the year is. You know, if they're cooler years or warmer years, they may take longer or shorter times to mature. But in general, if we stick to that range and a collection of 40 eau de vie, we can get consistency year in and year out. So when we look at something like VSOP, you're going 4 to 15 years. And again, the median is somewhere in the middle at that like 10 to 11 years. You got very little 4, very little 15, but you're going to get that consistency by having a greater range of age than you do within a whiskey world. And that's not a knock against whiskey. That's just saying that goes back to the chaos that we have at the core. To get consistency at the end, we need a greater range because we don't know when they're going to reach that. So when the second part of your thing was really about the selection of the eau de vie. So the eau de vie we select for a VS over a VSOP or over an XO or anything else is going to be based on that idea. What do we think it's going to take to reach the maturity for this? That's one question. The other is, what does it have right now? You know, we're not going to take something that is light, floral, delicate, and put it in VS. Why? Because VS has that big, bold oak, and a lot of the VS eau de vie goes in new oak. Well, anything light, floral, and delicate can get destroyed by new oak. So eau de vie we're looking for VS needs to be big, bold, and have a lot of fruit. You know, when we look at bourbon, how can bourbon handle all that new oak? Well, it's got that big corn base, that sweetness from corn that allows it to handle that new oak. And then that, you know, the wheat and the barley and the other parts of the mash are going to add nuance to it. But that corn allows it to handle that new oak really well. The same way a big bold eau de vie is going to handle that new oak better than something light and more delicate and floral.
Great.
Outstanding. That really makes me want to drink some more.
Yeah, I'm with it.
Yeah.
So we should make one. Well, we put you through the paces the last time, so maybe we can make Luke one. You want to make one of those cocktails off that list? You want to tell him which one?
Do we want to go with the Metro? A little bit more boozy?
Yeah, the Metro. Something stirred. So we tried one that kind of showcased Cognac's versatility when it comes with making a cocktail you might think, oh, this would be a good cocktail for a white spirit. And now we're gonna make one that is clearly a spin on the Metropolitan, which you might call a Brandy Manhattan.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I'm gonna make 3 drinks in this big one. But each drink is gonna have 3 dashes of Peychaud, a 1/4 ounce of pomegranate syrup, 1/2 ounce of Dubonnet, and 2 ounces of Hennessy.
So you said pomegranate was one of the syrups that made the trek unbroken. Is that right?
No, pomegranate broke.
Ah,
okay.
You do it. I'll.
What would you like to make?
You know what? I have a pomegranate syrup I've made, so I'll do it with that.
Okay. Compare and contrast. I mean, visually, we won't be able to taste each other's. That's it. I think we scared him away.
Yeah.
But I do like pomegranate because it's something about it, like it gets used in so many like Middle Eastern dishes, and that just like makes me think of spice, which makes me think of kind of like the barrel aging. I think it works so well in that way.
Yeah. We also sneak a little pomegranate molasses in ours to give it that really like cinnamony and spicy background. We'll send you another one. We'll call it balsamic vinegar though.
Good luck. Yeah.
Although I would have thought syrups wouldn't have been a problem.
You never know.
What if we just started bottling in metal? We'd never have this problem.
Gordon's going to start getting flagged for a bunch of oils getting sent. Balsamic vinegar and whatnot.
My concierge at my apartment already wonders what I do, and I've just purposely not told him just to keep them all guessing at all the weird shipments I get.
It's outstanding. Well, while you're, whipping up your version, tell me your actual title again.
So my actual title, I've had 6 now in 10 years for pretty much the same role. So I don't know what that says to things, but my actual title is Global Ambassador and Manager of Trade Advocacy.
Trade advocacy. Okay. You're an advocate for trade. Okay.
Yes.
And I've heard you reduce that to Hennessy's bartender.
Yes, completely, because it's the role of a bartender has always been one of just universal. Like it's nowadays we're so enamored with the idea of a mixologist and somebody who makes drinks, but that was always the case. Like mixologist is not a new term. It was used by Jerry Thomas in 1862 in one of the first bartending guides. But I remember my days just bartending at a pub down the street, and it was, you know, I had to go get. I've been in the industry 22 years now. So it was in Canada, you can start bartending at 18. So it's, I had to go get the newspaper, like 4 newspapers, one national, one, you know, one global, and 2 local papers, and just put them on the bar. Like every morning you'd come in, you'd get your till, you'd write a little note like this, like $1.50 for newspapers. And you'd go outside and just like grab them off the street corner and throw them in on the bar top. And when no one was there and the bar was clean, you used to read. Well, why? So that all the guests that came in solo, you had a chance to converse with them. You had a chance to talk about the global events, talk about, you know, the sports, you know, anything like that. So it was, a bartender has always been, you know, a lot of different roles, from psychiatrist all the way through the gambit. And I think, you know, like dating coach, all of those things. Like one of my favorite things was always having like a couple on that you could tell was on like a first date, or like maybe one of their first few dates anyway, sitting at the bar, and they're just like stumped for something to talk about at some point, and you have to just like interject yourself quietly to say like, hey, how is everything? Like, do you like this drink? Hey, do you guys want to try this? Or, you know, something to like make the evening, give them something to go off. And I always thought that was beautiful. So I describe myself as Hennessy's bartender because I'm sort of the Swiss Army knife for it. It's like, do you want training? Do you want new drinks? Do you want to figure out what we're going to do for some bartending convention? Or, you know, there's my job title, you can write it down, but it's laughable because it's never going to be, I'm never going to, something might happen like COVID and you have to like shift the entire job in a new direction and do something that's not in your job description. And that's always the case for anyone working in a bar. So it's just a bartender with a different set of parameters.
Cheers.
Just checking the chat here.
That's delicious.
Curtis and Patty, yes, my knife collection. I enjoy it as well. I got a few of those in Japan.
Nice. Global brand ambassador.
Yeah, that's some of the perks of the job. But, you know, bartender.
So how did you get
I'm not,
from bartending at 18 to Hennessy's bartender?
Yeah, so I'm going to make this as quick as possible because it's, you know, young bartenders ask me trying to see like how I think the path is a lot easier nowadays. There's like a defined, you know, people are looking for ambassadors, but, you know, 10 years ago when I started, there weren't as many as there are today. And certainly when I started off bartending, there were none that I knew of, especially in Canada. So I was bartending. I was loving life. I went to school. I have a useless degree. It's film and television production. As you can see, I do a lot of that. But I was out in the world and working in film and television and realizing I didn't really like it. And I was bartending on weekends and said, okay, well, I'm going to go back to that to figure out what I want to do. And in so doing, I was still researching cocktails and I got into it. And at that time in Toronto, there was no one really doing it. I was one of 8 bartenders in competitions. Competitions led me to getting into a competition for Belvedere, which of course is a partner with Hennessy. It's our vodka. And it was for the Global Dream Job. They were looking for somebody to be an ambassador for them for a year. It's kind of like a PR thing. Get all these global bartenders to compete, film it the whole way at every stage of the competition, get to the end and get a winner, and they'll get a 1-year contract to be the global ambassador for Belvedere. I wasn't sure I wanted to be a global ambassador, but I also didn't think I would make the finals when I first got into it. So lo and behold, I made the final 8. Hennessy, I didn't win. Hennessy saw my videos though and thought, worth an interview, because they were looking for somebody to preach the mixability of cognac. Because when you think about 10 years ago, you wouldn't have found a cognac cocktail on a menu, perhaps even at a French bistro. So it's something to be said that now today we're sitting on a chat talking about cognac and cocktails, and we've already made 2, which was more than you'd have seen on a menu years ago. So I started with that, and then in that role, they thought, wow, this has been really effective. And a lot of the regions, we traveled around to 8 major cities across the US, said, yeah, we want him. And so I became national for the US as a Canadian representing a French brand. I was the national US ambassador.
With an Irish name.
It made sense. It made sense to somebody somewhere. And then, and now I'm global because the world, or the French in Paris and cognac, I've realized that, cocktails aren't going away anytime soon. They've fundamentally changed the landscape of bars and the way people enjoy spirits. And so we need to talk about this on a much broader scale. So it's been a wonderful journey, and I can honestly say I would not be here if the product wasn't good. And I know that sounds like a pitch, but on the day I interviewed in New York, they flew me in. I worked the shift later that night. So I flew in for an interview and flew back to open the bar at 5 o'clock. So I was there, and they asked me at the end of an hour long making drinks in front of everyone at Hennessy's head office, like 13 people firing questions at me. They asked me, do you have anything to add to, everything you've told us? And I said, yeah, my dog's name is Hennessy. And my dog's name was Hennessy at the time, which is why this dog can't be called Hennessy, because I'm not going to reuse the name. Hennessy was a beautiful dog. Sadly, she's passed now, but that was no word of a lie. So it kind of worked out well. Yeah. As a kid, I had a dog named Brandy, who was a yellow lab. So when Brandy passed, I was in my early 20s, and Hennessy was a rescue, but she was the color of Hennessy VS. So Brandy, I called her Hennessy, and that was it. That sealed it.
Yeah.
So you were a fan of the product.
I don't think they believed me at the time. Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, I don't think they believed me at the time. They kind of laughed, and then it was like a year later I brought it up, and they were like, "Oh, we thought you were joking." But either way, they thought it was great, so it sealed it.
He's full of shit, but he's witty as hell. No, that's real. I love it. I love it. So just a little more geeking into the weeds here. Specifically, we talked about the grape being Uni Blanc, Trebbiano, and you mentioned a few things about the way you treat the different line items as far as barrel treatment. But the grapes themselves, there's several regions in cognac, right? There's Grand Champagne, there's Petit Champagne, and you'll see those referenced proudly on certain companies' bottles, Grand Champagne. Yeah. Hennessy doesn't have that. So now if you ask those companies, they will tell you, well, of course it's Grand Champagne, because Grand Champagne is the best. Can you talk about why it is or isn't better to have Grand, Petit, fine Champagne Cognac, or also add those other areas in?
So the regions you're referencing we call Cru. So there's Grand Champagne, Petit Champagne, Borderie, and Fines-Bois. And those are the original 4. And then we have Bon Bois and Bois Ordinaire that were added in 1909 to create 6 that are present. Now, to reference this, when all these cognac, like Hennessy's been around since 1765. Remy Martin and Martel were before that. The original cognac house is from 1643 registered. So a lot of us were making cognac before these regions existed as regions. Like these are lines on a map towards what we were already experiencing within the flavors that they were producing. And we were going after individual fields or individual producers, individual farmers to get eau de vie or get wine from them. So when the lines in the field were created in the 1850s, it was done with a geologist and a prominent wine taster at the time working together to figure out, you know, what that was. But at the same time, they are lines on a map. And you would be kidding yourself if on the line between Fimbois and Grand Champagne, there weren't some similarities field to field. You'd be kidding yourself where those lines intersect, because sometimes it's a road, sometimes it's a fence, sometimes it's something a little bit more substantial like a river that divides them. But there's some nuance difference. So there's not a hard and fast rule. And at the same time, pick your favorite wine region of the world and tell me everything they produce is great. It's wine. It's all going to change. So it's really about how it's produced, how it's treated every step of the way. You can screw up the best eau de vie through blending it poorly. Blending it with something that, how many times have you made a cocktail? Like, I've made more failure cocktails than I've made successes. Like, once you get the recipe dialed in, it's easy to duplicate that. But when you're coming up with the recipe for the first time, how many failures do you have before you get a success, right? Like, that's why we have an 8th generation master blender, to know what these eau de vie are and how they're going to work together. You get better at making cocktails the longer you make cocktails. That is true of anyone. And so to say that one region, that's a long way of saying, to say that one region makes the cognac is a fallacy, and it's a marketing tool. Hennessy is not worried about marketing. We're not worried about marketing tricks. We do market quite well, but it really, at the end of the day, they're two opposing factions. They're not even in the same office. So our production is in Cognac, our marketing happens out of Paris, and then in the US out of New York. So they're not influencing the production of the Cognac. And I'm not saying they do in other houses. What I'm saying is, so many times Cognac is misunderstood because of marketing tools. And when you say Grand Champagne is the best, well, yes, if you're only using that, of course you're going to say that. A Bordeaux winery can easily say, you know, Merlot is a superior grape to Pinot Noir because they don't make Pinot Noir. So of course you're going to say Grand Champagne is the best if you only use Grand Champagne. Grand Champagne and Petit Champagne do have a high potential for great finesse and elegance. However, like Bordeaux wine, it takes a long time to reach its potential. Therefore, when you look at a house like Remy Martin that uses only Grand and Petit Champagne, you don't see a VS. They stopped making it a number of years ago, and even when they did, they never focused on it. They focus on older cognacs because that's what Grand and Petit Champagne has the potential to make. Fimbois and Bordeaux get used by, or Fimbois, we use a lot of Fimbois in our younger stuff because it reaches potential younger. So does Bordeaux. Will it ever reach the finesse of Grand Champagne? Some of the eau de vie will. They have the potential to do that, but in general, it's not going to, on whole, if you took the body of Fimbois versus the body of Grand Champagne is going to reach higher finesse as it ages. Well, that's why in XO you see more Grand and Petit Champagne than you do see Grand and Petit Champagne in VS. If you saw any Grand and Petit Champagne in RVS, we would consider that an outlier to what we expect from Grand and Petit Champagne. So we look for the individual eau de vie, regardless of where it comes from. And we look for the individual qualities of that eau de vie versus the field. We don't handcuff ourselves to, we need to only use this. We like to have the breadth of flavors so that we can continue to make a range, which is why you see a large range out of Hennessy Cognac. You know, we have a popular VS, we have a popular VSOP, we have a popular XO, and we have multiple others like Hennessy Black that's only available in the US and parts of Canada. And we have other one-offs around the world because we have that breadth of playing with all the crew, providing it's a great flavor profile.
Outstanding. Speaking of differences, you know, you have VS, VSOP, XO. What is black? And it's not very dark, is it?
So where is it here? Right there. So Hennessy Black is in a black bottle, and yet it is much lighter in flavor profile as far as the oak notes go than something like VS, and yet it is the same age as VS. So it is 2 to 8 years old, as we talk about VS. The difference being VS goes in new oak, so we need big, powerful eau de vie, as we talked about, to go up against that new oak. Black is looking for the light, floral, elegant eau de vie, light fruit. So we're putting it in what we would call a category D barrel. That's internal speak. Realistically, that's a 10-year-old barrel. And at that age, there's only about 10% left of extractable flavors and tannins from the barrel. So, you know, in whiskey terms, that might almost be considered neutral. Or close to neutral, or a finishing barrel in that way. And yet in cognac, we don't, even neutral barrels are useful because angel share is still happening, which is concentrating the flavors that are already there. And that's what Hennessy Black is about, concentrating the flavors that are already there, which is that white wine concentrate. So you're looking at those, you know, bright orchard fruits, you know, the apple, pear, apricot, peach, you know, vanilla, all those things coming in versus kind of that cinnamon spice and all those nice flavors that come from the barrel, which, you know, to those flavors of cognac are making more dried apricot, more fig and date notes in kind of more aged cognacs that are looking at new oak.
So that's interesting because it makes it sound like those lighter floral notes you're talking about is the same kind of notes you were talking about when you were talking about VSOP. So is this...
Yeah, so VSOP, sorry, continue.
Kind of a younger,
cut you off.
Kind of more affordable, more mixable price point for the VSOP kind of profile?
I would say it's got aspects of it, but I would say you've got, it's like a pyramid where VS and Black sit at the base of the pyramid and go towards VSOP, where VSOP's got some of that oak characteristic of VS, but it's blending it in harmoniously with that bright, that floral and the fruit aspect of Black. You're not going to get the brightness of fruit from Black in VSOP, but you're not going to get the drying aspect of the spice or the bite from that spice from the VS. You're going to get kind of harmony in a bottle between the grape and barrel, where VS is like a battle between the grape and barrel. Black is one of grape dominance. VSOP is kind of the harmony of them coming together, and you're getting like the VSOP barrel is about 5 years old. And so it has about 40% of extractable flavors and tannins, but because it goes to 15 years, think about it like a Scotch. It's like getting a lot out of that barrel, but it still has like the core essence of it. Whereas like bourbon going in new oak, it's getting like a lot of wood. You're not getting as much of the nuance of the essence of it. Scotch is getting more of that nuance of the essence, but it's got to be in there for longer to get a similar amount of oak.
Speaking of the difference between Scotch and other, say, whiskeys, American whiskeys tend to be aged where it's hotter, and Scotland is colder. Cognac is also colder. So how do you think?
Yeah, not as cold as Scotland, but close, yeah.
No, yeah. But not as warm as Kentucky.
Certainly not as warm as Kentucky. Yeah, so we've got a temperate climate. So we do get some pretty warm summers, but they're just shorter periods of time. We get some cooler winters, but it's not, you know, layers of snow like Canada's getting. So it's kind of in between.
Ask what pretty warm is.
Pretty warm. Okay, converting to Fahrenheit. We'll get frost and we'll get ice. Pretty warm. It's not going to be Kentucky, but it might get up into the 90s, mid 90s in Cognac in summer. It can get warm, but it's just like that length of time. It's kind of like, you know, Toronto, New York, you know, DC. It's all like, we get 4 seasons in Cognac, you know, it's not going to be, you know, shortened other seasons and then like incredibly warm, long spans. We also have humid and dry cellars to add like another twist on things. Historically, the cellars would have been damp cellars because all the, you know, that's where cellars were. They were either underground or in Cognac. Most of them are not underground, but they're first level, but right by a river or at the base of a hill with a natural clay floor where water runoff on the hill is going to come down. That floor is going to stay moist. That room's going to stay moist. Not moist, but you know, humid, more humid than an arid desert or anything like that. But in about 60 years ago, they started playing with dry cellars because they saw what was happening globally, where you had dry climates. You know, like you take Kentucky and up it a notch, get down to the Caribbean or get down to, you know, Mexico aging. You know, tequila doesn't need to age very long to get huge impact from that barrel because of how dry it is and how warm it is. Well, so we started playing with drier cellars to see what that would do with aging. And so that became an aspect of how we could treat eau de vie. So for younger stuff like VS and black, might spend more time or the first part of its life in that dry cellar, whereas for longer aging, you want to put it in that damp cellar because you're not going to get as much evaporation or as much angel share out of it. And it's going to be like a more subtle aging process over time.
Oh, yeah. Outstanding.
So I warned everybody that going into a cognac talk, you're going to start with questions and you're going to leave with more questions.
Oh, no.
Yeah, we can do this for hours.
And that's what, there are so many variables on cognac that that's why we don't write how it's made on the back label. There's not a font in the world big enough or small enough or a label big enough to accomplish that.
Yeah. So it's all down to technique and how well are you good at your job.
Totally. I have read a deck that's 27 pages long on one technique in distillation that we shared with the families that we buy different eau de vie from, because we have some of our own distilleries, but we also get from others. And it was 27 pages on just one technique. And at the end it said, but none of this matters if you aren't there to taste it at every step of the process. So it all comes down to that experience and that tasting and going from there.
So you buy some wine, but you also buy some of that Bruy, right?
Yeah. So there's 1,800 families that we get that grow for us or that grow and we buy from. And then there are 800 families that distill for us. So we have 3 what are considered large distilleries in Cognac. And you have to think about this. We're only able to distill for, you know, that 5 months of time, give or take a few weeks based on wine production. So we need to be operating 24/7 when we do that. It's not like a lot of distilleries that can operate, you know, every day of the year, you know, if they have the production capacity, whereas we need to, you know, quick and get to the races. So we've got 3 distilleries that have about 12 to 14 stills in them each. We have 19 families that have similar sized operations that distill exclusively for us. But then we have 78 that distill for us and may also, you know, sell to partners. And about 600 of them are known as Bruyère de Cru. So Bruyère de Cru is somebody that, in fact, Maurice Hennessy, 8th generation of the Hennessy family, is a Bruyère de Cru. He grows the grapes on his property, makes the wine on his property, and then distills it on his property, and then sells it to the greater Hennessy company. I'm sure his accountants are loving having a field day with that. But it's, you know, you own parts of this and you sell to them, whatever. But a Bruyère de Cru is somebody that is making the eau de vie on site, versus some of those growing families are sending the wine to a bigger distillery to distill. You know, in another world, it might be called contract distilling, but they're getting it distilled with the anticipation of selling it to one of the bigger houses or using it themselves. So we have, again, it's part of the terroir. You know, if they're distilling on site as well, they should know how to distill their wine better than anyone. And our research and development will tell them, we'll share with them techniques. Every year we would meet with them before the time of distillation to talk about any new findings we have, talk about what we've seen from this harvest so far as we get into it, what we expect, and send them on their ways. For the first time last season, in 2020, was the first time this meeting hasn't happened because of COVID. They had to do it virtually.
Oh.
They did it virtually, and because it's French and the internet's not the greatest, they went around to each individual family or gathered them in smaller groups to talk about it as opposed to one big gathering.
Wow. That's pretty intense.
Yeah. Well, do you want to make one more drink?
We might as well. You want to make that Bramble?
Yeah. So I tried the blackberry one first, and it struck me because I love this drink because it goes to what we spoke about earlier, which was the versatility of cognac, and I kind of mentioned gin, that gin and cognac kind of, you know, when you're mixing, you never know whether you're going to try to zig and it's going to zag on you or anything like that. But I made this variation on a drink I've done before, but the Bramble is a classic gin cocktail out of England. And, you know, in the US and North America, we praise Dale de Graaf as the king of cocktail, the guy that got us back to making great cocktails. In his foil, or his counterpart in London was Dick Bradsell, and the Bramble comes to us from there. And the Bramble is a beautiful cocktail, but berries and gin work really well. You get the brightness and you get the berries, but cognac and gin, you're pairing a lot of that like beautiful fruit, and you're bringing that spice to the table with VS. So I was playing with half an ounce of the blackberry syrup, a half ounce of lemon juice. I was using a ruby port. If you don't have a ruby port, you can use a nice big red wine or something like that. And I call this the New York Bramble because I always like the New York sour, or you can use Dubonnet as well. That New York sour is such a beautiful drink of like wine floated on top of a sour that I always like that aspect of it. And grapes are going to go really well. So that half ounce of the Dubonnet, the wine or the port is going to really bring out that grape aspect. I'm using an ounce and a half of Hennessy VS because I like that big, bold fruit of the blackberry syrup, and it goes really well with kind of that boldness from Hennessy VS. We're going to shake this up, and I am going to grab a glass to put this in. We're going to shake this up, and then we're going to top it with some soda really quick.
I'm going to go grab you a soda there.
So Jordan, you did say we are doing just a short shake, top it with soda and the port wine.
You can put the port wine in the shaker, or you can put it over top.
Okay.
Depends on
How
what
do you
you're
like
choosing. As far as I like to put it in as it's going to mix up anyway. If you float it over top, that can work, but you need a really dense mix. And so for a New York sour, that works. For this, I think putting it in. And then just a lemon twist over the top with a berry garnish works really nice. And blackberries are great in cocktails, or raspberries as well, but blackberries specifically because though they have a sweetness, they've also got that tartness to them. They're not just, it's not like a pineapple or a mango that's just coming at you with sweetness. It works really well, and it's very balanced. So like having it with that lemon or that citrus element is a match made in heaven. So this cocktail works super well, I think.
A little soda on top. Yeah, ooh, this smells great. Something like that.
What?
I like how your drink just disappears.
I know, exactly.
You put it out there. It's like, this is what it looks like, disappears. That's what
like.
happens all the time when I'm making drinks, and my fiance's hand will just come in and just the drink just slowly slides off the table.
That's when
but that means it's good.
It's a good drink when it disappears.
Yeah.
Yeah. If it shows back up, it's a problem.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, just for a second. Oh yeah. We just did
delicious.
We're doing another line of syrups. We're calling our Southern Farm series, and blackberry is one of the berries we've got so far.
It is. So we did with Botanist and Barrel, or as their farm is known as the Cedar Grove Blueberry Farm out around Hillsboro. I guess not technically Hillsboro, but we did get blackberries, blueberries, and raspberries. So the one that we made today was with our local blackberries. Thank you to Botanist and Barrel.
Raspberries is super interesting because raspberries is like one of those traditional syrups that you go back in the history of cocktails, and raspberry syrup appears multiple times. And I'm not sure, we probably need a botanist to tell us what the reasoning is for that over other berries, where raspberries just more, plentiful around North America at the time versus,
you hit it on the head earlier.
Others that might have been more.
I think you hit it on the head earlier. Raspberries are incredibly acidic. And just like when you were talking about needing wine, needing acid, if you want to age a wine, a lot of people think, oh, the wine needs to tannins and that. That's all nonsense. If you want to age a wine, the wine needs acid. It's the spine of wine.
Yep.
But it's also, when you're talking about berries or any flavors that you're going to make sweet, everything we think of as sweet isn't sweet, or we just eat granulated white sugar, right? So good fruit stuff that's sweet needs to have a lot of acid. Chocolate needs to have bitter. A caramel needs to have bitter. And I think, to your point earlier, that balance, that the acid in raspberry really is why it was so easy to use.
Yeah.
It originally
that's likely
like a jam. Yeah. It wasn't like a syrup, but they would use like a jam or jelly.
Well, because
jam makes a great cocktail ingredient.
Yeah.
It also sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, if you've ever processed 30 to 60 pounds of berries and then tried to strain those seeds out, I could see how jams and jellies would be that route to go. That sounds a lot easier. A lot
totally.
Less time
consuming. I hadn't thought about that either. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Jams are just, I like playing with them because I tell people when I make them, I like cocktails that beg people to ask questions. Because, we have this cocktail renaissance, but there's still the bulk of the population is still sort of fearful of them. It's like there's this there's this weird place between food and alcohol where people will experiment with food before they'll experiment with alcohol. Like,
right.
I truly believe no one loves like whiskey and Coke or vodka soda or anything like that. They're good. And it's nearly impossible for anyone standing behind a bar to screw it up unless your gun runs out of something or, you know, you put the wrong ingredient in. But but a cocktail scares them because they read down a menu and they don't understand what the hell Dubonnet is. I've never had port before. What's that? Like all these things, you know, it's when you read down a food menu, it's easier to understand all those ingredients. So you can kind of make that link in your mind. And so I like cocktails that beg questions where like, why are you putting jam in that person's drink? Because that opens the conversation. Now I can tell you my thought process behind it. And now I can maybe swing you on board. I can get you away from that vodka soda, that whiskey Coke, that, you know, that simple drink you've got, maybe to open up a world. I can get you away from the steak and potatoes of drinking into like the new one. I can get you into sushi now. I can get you into kind of different barbecue that you haven't had, all these different things. So that's interesting to me. And all it takes is like, instead of using an orange liqueur, use a scoop of orange marmalade. And
right.
You've now changed that drink from something regular to something, what are you doing?
I think it's a lot of like fear because people coming in with preconceived notions with like, oh, I tried this at another bar. Maybe they weren't technically doing it right. Maybe you can't do it right either, you know, and going with what is safe, even if you tell them, you know, it'd be like, if you don't like it, I will take it back. But then the next thing you hear is, you know, as long as it's not too sweet, which almost means nothing because I don't know what you think is sweet. But like the beauty around drinks is that you can always adjust it. Even like after I give you this, you're like, oh, I like it sweeter. I can add more syrup. I can add more sweetener to it and we can modify it. It's not like I can recook a dish,
totally.
But I can simply add a couple things to that and we're good to go.
Yeah. And I think it's to the point we talked about earlier, it's a lot of things we think are sweet aren't sweet.
Mm-hmm.
They're a fruit flavor. So we equate it with sweet. So if we can make,
like salt.
I think when people talk about, and I've had arguments when I was behind the stick with owners that said, oh, we want sweet drinks because those are popular. And it's like, no, you want balanced drinks. Like you don't want just like lemon and spirit in a glass. I get that. You want something balanced, but it doesn't need to be sweet to come off sweet. You know, you make something in the berry realm, in the fruit realm or the tropical fruit realm, anything like that, and you can still make it balanced. Like good tiki is not supposed to be sweet. It's still supposed to be balanced in that realm and should be probably strong as hell as well. But it should still be balanced. And a balanced drink goes a lot farther away because you can drink more. Like you can enjoy more at the end of the day. You can sit there. Whereas if you have something overly sweet.
Right.
Yeah. I learned more about how to construct a drink from a pastry chef than I ever did from a regular chef.
Sure.
So many people equate our jobs behind the bar to like chefs. And it's like, no. It's the pastry chef. Because if you've noticed, good desserts aren't overly sweet. They're balanced. Is it like bitter cacao that's balancing out some other sugar element that's balancing out like lemon meringue pie? You got meringue that's really sweet, but you've got the tartness of lemon coming in there. And then you've got that crispiness of the crust and the crust shouldn't be that sweet. So it's all of it coming together. And I learned so much from talking to pastry chefs about balance in that like you can have sweet elements, but then you also need to balance it out. And we've got so much at our disposal between sweet and sour. You've also got bitter as that kind of like 3D element to bring those all together. And then you've got strong and weak. And there's so many ways to play. And I think it's the right cocktail list is exactly what we've done today. We've got strong, we've got like long drinks, We've got some shorter drinks that are fruitier. Like it's not everyone should like every cocktail on your menu unless they're doing an exploration, but they should naturally deviate towards one or the other. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And to be honest, that's what cognac is about, like trying different ones. Like VS is not right for every situation, but knowing what it brings to the table versus a VSOP versus a black versus an XO can tell you what moment you're in at that time. XO is a beautiful cognac. Do I want to drink it all day long? No, it all depends on the day. It all depends what mood I'm in. Like the mojito and the Manhattan exist in different worlds. So too should your cognac selection.
Nice.
Yeah, that's great.
There's Pru. I think it's time for some giveaways. I think she's barking to go.
Yeah.
So we like to do some giveaways, and this week we're going to give away like a syrup. Everybody who gets it right, we're going to get one of our syrups from the Southern Farm series. Maybe we'll just do blackberry, so people can make this drink at home.
Well, they could choose. You could have a choice between blackberry, blueberry, or raspberry. How about that?
Okay.
Give them some decisions, you know?
Addie, Curtis, don't answer our, oh, what a cute dog. What kind of dog is that?
This is an Australian doodle. So
Doodle.
I'm jealous of him because he's wearing a tuxedo every day of the year. Mm-hmm. And I wish I could.
Yes. Very nice. Very nice.
But he gets very intrigued when I make cocktails.
Oh, as does everyone. Okay.
Do you want to start off with a question?
Okay, we got some questions.
Yeah.
And if you'd like to ask a question, treats. I need this. Why am I not getting treats? I'm on camera.
I just want to be held like that.
He's the real star.
There you go.
Stealing the show.
Jordan, I'm sorry, but Luke's flying to Canada.
I have family. Why not?
Okay. Question number 1, and I'll let Jordan go next with question number 2. Question number 1, he threw a lot of numbers out there, and when you answer, I know a lot of you have been on this before, but let's get the rules out for everyone. Whoever types the correct answer in the chat first wins, and then follow, once we identify you as the correct person, feel free to contact Claire, that's Claire, C-L-A-I-R-E, at Alley26, all spelled out in letters, like the labels.
It's in the chat.
It's in the chat as well. That's because Claire's in charge. But she tells me to say it, and then she makes fun of me. I'm abused here. Okay, so answer with the correct answer and in the chat, and Claire will make sure you get your thing. Okay, he threw out a lot of numbers, so we're going to start with 1. He said they work with 1,800 winemakers. They worked with 800 distilleries. How many distilleries did they work with exclusively Hennessy?
That's a tough one.
Jesus.
Yeah.
No softballs here. Yeah.
No, really just start off with a
Go
knockout.
right at him. Go right at him.
Yeah.
Well, you said 18 and 800 like 14 times. And we can keep asking questions again because Patty and Curtis, they'll just steal all the stuff. Nobody knows? Oh, good. I'm going to get some swag. Oh, wait a minute. It's my own stuff. God, losing again.
Wow. Yeah.
Okay. Would you like to ask one?
Yeah. Are we going to go that difficult?
No, we don't.
No.
What brand of paring knife did I use to cut my twist? No.
Apparently Japanese.
It's a shun.
Okay,
It's beautiful. So no, the question will be, how many eau de vie do the tasting committee taste every day? Randy Hartley, 40. Yeah, I said 40 to 60, so 40. Nailed it.
Randy Hartley, maybe you can pick that up with the swag you won last week.
Well done.
Well done. Well done.
I barely finished the question before like 40 popped up on my screen.
And now you know what? You're making fun of me for asking a tough question, but like Randy's on the call. Hey, Randy.
I figured because we said that way at the beginning, and everybody had like 3 drinks since then, and
right.
Randy, I think, was drinking as we started this call, so could have been even more, but he nailed it.
He needed to, be flexible. He didn't want the drinks
so
to
I should have gone
so
with my shun question.
I was having a cocktail made with cognac, Benedictine liqueur, and vermouth de Torino, and it was delicious.
Very nice.
Okay.
Excellent.
Yeah, Benedictine and cognac are such a classic combination that Benedictine came out with a pre-bottled B&B, brandy and Benedictine. So many times you see Benedictine as a different colored label, a black label that says B&B on it, because it's such a classic combination historically that you see it so much. But yeah, great combination.
Yes, and the Vucare will attest to that.
Definitely.
Okay.
I'll let you ask another
challenging
question.
Go ahead.
I was gonna how many times is the cognac distilled?
Okay, that's good. See how long that took.
Wow, I'm asking people what's my favorite color?
Randy,
come on now.
Let somebody else have it.
All right, so we need something between these two questions.
Yeah, I think you're better at this.
I'm old, but I'm enthusiastic.
Yeah.
Me too.
When was the first cognac house registered?
Ooh. I can get the century.
I said it once.
You did.
Mm-hmm.
God damn it. I think Randy recorded this session and is scrolling through it.
Randy, you get one of each,
Okay, Randy.
He's been taking notes.
Okay, so Randy, we're going to give you one of each of the 3 Southern Farm Series syrups. Now we're going to ask a question for you not to answer.
Right, got it.
Yeah.
You got to give Patty and Curtis a question. Okay. So did anybody ever get the answer to mine? Okay, 19 was the answer, I believe. But we'll move on. Something less esoteric than that. I don't think we went over this, so I'm going to ask it anyway. If you're drinking Hennessy at home, the answer is on the back of the bottle. What is the parent company of Hennessy? And then maybe Jordan can explain to us how that happened. What's going on? Who did? Randy. Come on, Randy. You can't put it in the chat. Other people can read it.
And you got to respect the dominance. He's killing it. Game ready.
So that is actually only partially correct.
Right.
Exactly. Who owns them?
Because the parent company is Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy.
Oh. Mm-hmm. And who are they owned by?
They are owned by a very, very rich Frenchman. But it's sort of an interesting story because Hennessy and Moet combined in the 70s, realizing that those that like good cognac also tend to like other finer things in life, like champagne. That's a great connection. And so Moet Hennessy, I don't think you'll find a portfolio of brands that is more, that is better linked as far as ideals go, of creating the best product. Yeah, a number of them happen to have crazy marketing as well, but as far as the quality of the product they produce and the level of production, you don't tend to find anything more closely aligned as a portfolio of products. That's not to say there aren't other great spirits and wines and champagnes out there. There tend to be, though, portfolios that have like budget conscious versions or more widely spread versions versus, you know, their premium offerings, and they're kind of covering a lot of bases. Moet Hennessy is all going in towards the one base of that kind of quality, elevated kind of what has been referred to as luxury spirit in that way. And so as they were combined as partnerships, and it was not only for those reasons, but also that geographically at the time, they had different distribution, and it allowed for greater distribution of both products, but or more ease of distribution. But then as they acquired more spirits and wines that fit into that ethos, Louis Vuitton came around, and Louis Vuitton came around because they were doing the exact same thing in the fashion world, acquiring other brands that fit their ethos, and realizing that everyone that likes great champagne and great cognac and, you know, great scotch like Glenmorangie and Ardbeg and great vodka like Belvedere also probably likes great fashion, great watches, great other things like that. And so they combined as a company for kind of the betterment of the whole.
Oh, that's great.
And yeah, Randy, the hat is I love hats as well. I don't get to travel a lot with them. I love hat shops. This is also very COVID relatable because Toronto is still very much on lockdown. And so hats have gotten me through a lot of different Zoom meetings.
Where is that hat from?
This hat is from New York. It is from JJ Hat Center. It's on Fifth Avenue.
Oh, nice. Nice.
And
I've been a question, Shannon.
Maybe that could be one of your questions next
Buyer
week.
the hatter.
Yeah.
Come on now.
All right.
That's outstanding. Well, we've already taken up a lot of your time. I really appreciate
I could talk
that.
about cognac for days, as we've said.
We'll try to focus on one of your drinks this week on our menu. They were both really delicious. We'll riff on them.
Hey, your syrups are great.
And we want to thank you very much for spending this time with us, telling us about Hennessy, but also telling us your own story, because that's kind of what this series is about. Mm-hmm. We're really trying to get to the people behind the brands and to get folks in the industry and folks that are not in the industry that are just enthusiastic, more information about what people are doing in this field that we love. We're going to take next week off from this, but we're bouncing back the week after with
Bernie Lovers and Connor O'Driscoll, who is the master distiller of Heaven Hill.
And we're really excited about that conversation because those two guys are legends in the bourbon field.
We will be doing a whiskey tasting, so we'll put out a list of what we'll be doing. So if anybody would like to go get them, you can taste with us.
A little different from what we've been doing, like what we did tonight, where we make cocktails and such. That's just going to be a straight up whiskey tasting. Both Bernie and Connor know a lot about whiskey, but don't drink cocktails.
Yeah.
so we're going to focus on, we're going to lean into them. But for tonight, thank you very much, Jordan, Eduardo, all the folks at Hennessy, RNDC here, the distributor that have made these things possible for us. Really, really appreciate the support. And feel free to contact us or them if you have any questions about Hennessy. Jordan, can we offer you the last goodbye here?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you. You know, anybody that invests time into learning about cognac, you know, I would say everyone today, you're now in the top 99th percentile of people that know anything about cognac, because so many people don't. I think so many people leave it as a bottle on the back shelf to collect dust because they don't understand. I know my story personally, coming up through the bar world, you focus on spirits and beer behind the bar and you let the floor staff focus on wine so much of the time historically. And when you have a wine-based spirit, there's some hurdles to overcome to really understanding it. It's not an easy spirit to understand, but it certainly rewards those that experiment with it and rewards those that get into it, because it's a beautiful spirit. It's been around for a long time for a reason. It's influenced a lot of the other spirits you know and love for a reason. And so thank you for taking the time, because that is something that's, you know, as you said, we've been here for a significant amount of time. I could be here longer. Thank you for giving me the platform, because anybody taking this time to learn more about cognac is a friend of mine. And I hope that sometime in the near future or not too distant future, we can all raise a glass in person together and kind of continue the conversation. So thank you very much for creating the platform, Alley 26. Thank you for having me on. Eduardo, thank you for setting it up. And thank you everyone for giving me your time to listen. I appreciate it. And hopefully we raise this class together soon. Cheers.
Outstanding. I can't wait to see you in North Carolina. Cheers, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.
Cheers.
Thank you so much for tuning in.
Thank you.